A warm welcome to one and all to this session of biology. I'm Biji Suresh, teacher of Silver Hills Public School, Kozhikode. And in this session, we are dealing with Class 12 Biology, Chapter 10, Microbes in Human Welfare. Our planet is teeming with microbes. Many of them are harmful, they can cause dangerous diseases. But we can also make use of microbes for our welfare, for human welfare. How is that possible? We'll learn in this chapter. Before that, let me tell you a small quote that compares both bacteria and happiness. Both happiness and bacteria, they multiply on dividing. So, on that positive thought, let me start off with the learning objectives for today's class. Firstly, to understand and appreciate the uses of tiny microbes to mankind in different fields. Second is to be able to use this technology in various sectors like agriculture, industries, etc. And thirdly, to name some specific microbes. In this chapter, we shall be dealing with the uses of microbes in various fields. We start off with their use in households, then we go on to their industrial uses, then we shall be seeing how they help in sewage treatment and in generating biogas, and finally how they help in agriculture as biofertilizers or as biopesticides. So, all these we are going to deal with. Let's start off with the household uses of microbes. All of you must be familiar with these granules which your mother may use in the dough. Just a pinch of that she will use in the dough while she is making appam, etc. So, by the next day that dough would ferment like that. You can see a lot of bubbles in it. So, what had she added? What was this pinch that she had added? It was nothing but the yeast, a fungus by the name yeast. Its scientific name is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And fermentation by yeast had made the dough rise and had also given it a particular flavor, and the food item had become very spongy. Yeast is used by bakers, so it's called baker's yeast. It is also used in the alcohol industry, so it's also known as the brewer's yeast. Yeast is used in wine making. In household, we normally convert excess milk into curd. Curd is better because it has more of vitamin B12. It also has some microbes which are beneficial as gut flora. So, milk is converted into curd by lactic acid bacteria. For example, lactobacillus. So, they come under lab, the lactic acid bacteria which convert milk into curd. Cheese is one of the oldest food items in which microbes were used. So, we shall be discussing about two kinds of cheese. The first one is Swiss cheese. So, Swiss cheese has large holes because of the large amounts of carbon dioxide produced. And which is the bacterium producing it? It's a bacterium by the name Propionibacterium shermani. Propionibacterium shermani. The second one is Roquefort cheese. Roquefort cheese. It is ripened by growing a specific fungus on them which gives them a unique flavor. Next we move on to fermenters. Fermenters are large vessels for growing microbes on an industrial scale. They are used to produce beverages, antibiotics, etc. Fermented beverages can be produced either without distillation or with distillation. If it is with distillation, a lot of water content is lost. So, the alcoholic drink is much more strong. It was Sir Alexander Fleming who for the first time discovered the antibiotic by the name penicillin. He was working with the dangerous microbe called Staphylococci, and he identified that they did not grow when a particular mold fell on them. A fungus, a mold by the name Penicillium notatum, fell on the Petri plates containing the bacteria. So he thought something from the mold is inhibiting the bacterium, and he thought, why not identify that something and use it against bacterial diseases. Thus, penicillin was first isolated, but then its potential as an effective antibiotic was established much later by these two scientists, Ernest Chain and Howard Florey. And after that, penicillin was extensively used during the time of World War II. Now we have lots more of antibiotics. At that time it was only penicillin, the wonder drug. So Fleming, Florey and Chain, all three of them were awarded the Nobel Prize for this discovery in the year 1945. Now let us see acids which are produced commercially from microbes. So remember ABCl, that is acetic, butyric, citric and lactic acid. Acetic acid is produced by the bacterium Acetobacter aceti. Butyric acid is produced by the bacterium Clostridium butylicum. Citric acid is the acid produced by the fungus Aspergillus niger. Lactic acid is produced by the bacterium Lactobacillus. I have given only one in a different color, C, citric acid in a different color, because that is yielded by a fungus, whereas the other three are produced by bacteria. Even enzymes can be produced commercially with the help of microbes. We are going to study three enzymes: lipases, pectinases and proteases, and streptokinase. So starting with lipases, from the name you can understand, lipid digesting. So these enzymes are used in detergent formulations. They help to remove oily stains from laundry. When you use those detergents containing lipases, easily the stains which are having oil content in it, fat content in it, can be removed. So that enzyme is lipase. The second one is pectinases and proteases. They are used commercially to clarify fruit juices. You can easily make fruit juices at home, but it will not be clear. It will have a murky appearance. But the ones you buy from the market are very, very clear because they have been clarified by these two enzymes. The third one is streptokinase. It is produced by the bacterium Streptococcus, a dangerous bacterium only, but from that a substance was isolated, modified and made useful as a clot buster. Streptokinase helps to remove clots from the blood vessels of patients who have undergone myocardial infarction leading to a heart attack. Even some bioactive molecules have been yielded from microbes. We are going to discuss two examples. The first one being cyclosporin A and the second one is statins. Cyclosporin A is used as an immunosuppressive agent in organ transplants. When you receive an organ as a transplant, you are the recipient of, say, a kidney, a donor's kidney. Then, though that kidney was useful for your body, it is immediately identified as something foreign by your antibodies. So, to suppress those antibodies, you use this bioactive molecule called cyclosporin A. It is got from the fungus Trichoderma polysporum. The second bioactive molecule is statins. They are produced from the yeast Monascus purpureus, and it's a blood cholesterol lowering agent. It will reduce cholesterol in blood. How does statin reduce cholesterol in blood? It acts competitively by inhibiting the enzyme responsible for the synthesis of cholesterol. And high cholesterol means there could be high blood pressure and such other problems. So that is kept under check by using statins. Now moving on to wastewater treatment. I introduce a new term STP, that is sewage treatment plant. STPs, they help to reduce the BOD of wastewater which is coming from industries, factories, houses, etc., and makes it less polluting. So here's an aerial view of a sewage treatment plant. What happens here? The main thing is that BOD is brought down. So another new term, BOD. The full form is biochemical oxygen demand. What does it mean? BOD is the amount of oxygen that would be consumed if all the organic matter in the waste water were to be oxidized by bacteria. So that much oxygen which is consumed to break down the wastes by bacteria present in the wastewater, that is called BOD or biochemical oxygen demand. If it is polluted water, the BOD will be high, and clean water will have less BOD. The sewage treatment in an STP is done in two processes. The first one is called primary treatment, followed by the secondary treatment. The primary treatment is a mere physical process. It mainly includes these two processes, filtration and sedimentation. And what settles down is called the primary sludge. That is removed, and the supernatant liquid above will go for the next treatment, which is secondary treatment. So here's a picture of primary treatment happening. That first time the wastewater is coming in, all the solid impurities will be checked over here. Still there will be grit and pebbles, all of them will settle down here. Further, there is a sedimentation tank, and only the supernatant liquid will then go for secondary treatment, which is a biological treatment, where from the name you can understand biological means microbes are involved. So the effluent is passed into large aeration tanks where it is mechanically agitated and air is pumped in. So if there is aeration, that means there is oxygen. So aerobic bacteria will first act on it. Let us see, here's the secondary treatment happening, and you can see air is pumped in, the liquid is being agitated, and something is forming on top of this wastewater. What is that? Let us see. So when air is pumped in, it will allow vigorous growth of aerobic microbes. They appear as flocks. So what you saw here, these are the flocks, FLOCS. Flocks are masses of bacteria along with fungal filaments that form mesh-like structures. And what do? While the flocks are growing, while these bacteria and fungi are growing, these aerobic microbes will consume a major part of the organic matter. The waste matter is consumed, broken down, thus reducing the BOD and pollution level of the water. So over here you can see flocks, which bring down the BOD, bring down the pollution level. The effluent is now passed into a settling tank, where the flocks will go down, settle down. This sediment that settles down is called activated sludge. During that physical treatment, primary treatment, it was called primary sludge. Now it is called activated sludge. What is settling down during secondary treatment? A small part of this sludge is pumped back into the aeration tank as inoculum. And then the remaining part, the liquid above, the secondary effluent, that will go into anaerobic sludge digesters, huge tanks like this. From the name itself you can understand. Now acting on it will be bacteria which are anaerobic, which don't require molecular oxygen. So the remaining part is pumped into large tanks called anaerobic sludge digesters. Here anaerobic bacteria act further on the organic matter and flocks in the sludge, and they will completely break down all those unwanted materials, and during this time they give out a mixture of gases like methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, etc. And that gas is called biogas. So this simple technique can also be used in a biogas plant, in houses where they are doing dairy farming or where they have a poultry farm. There and all we can install a biogas plant. It is nothing but a small concrete tank around 10 to 15 feet deep, in which the waste materials are added. The excreta from the poultry farm or the dairy farm can be added. So dung is mixed with water and that slurry is fed into one part of the tank. And the depth of the tank, it is covered by a lid, which is a floating cover, which keeps on rising as more biogas is produced, and when that is consumed, when that is used for burning in the kitchen, then the floating lid will go down. So here you see, this is the biogas tank. Over that there is the floating lid, and there is an opening through which there is a pipe, a gas outlet pipe, which goes and connects to the kitchen stove, because this gas, biogas, can burn with a brilliant blue flame. So on both sides you see there are small pits. It is here that dung and water are fed as a slurry, and over there, once the decomposition is over, the manure is got as sludge. It can be used as manure in agriculture. So the outlet pipe from the tank passes the biogas produced to the kitchen stove to be used as fuel, this particular pipe. And the spent slurry is collected and removed through another outlet, which can be used as manure. Over there you get the spent slurry. So two benefits. One, you get biogas, which can be used for cooking and lighting, and you are also getting manure. The harmful waste has been converted into manure. Now biogas plants were brought into India and made popular by these two organizations, KVIC and IARI. KVIC is Khadi and Village Industries Commission. IARI is Indian Agricultural Research Institute. Now we will see how microbes can be used in agriculture. We can use them as biocontrol agents. Instead of using pesticides, you can use a living organism to control pests. Already you are familiar with ladybirds, those ladybird beetles used to control dangerous aphids which eat away plant parts, or dragonflies used to control mosquitoes. Now let us see how tiny microbes help as biocontrol agents in agriculture. Let's see how a fungus was used as a biocontrol agent. The fungus is called Trichoderma. Trichoderma, which is a free-living fungus common in root ecosystems. They are effective biocontrol agents against several plant pathogens. So here you see a culture of this fungus, Trichoderma, in a petri dish under lab conditions. Viruses, you know, are in the borderline between living and non-living. Even they can be used. Some of them can be used in agriculture. Good examples are baculoviruses. Baculoviruses. These viruses belong to the genus Nucleopolyhedrovirus, and they are used to control insects and other arthropods. They are excellent candidates for species-specific narrow-spectrum insecticidal applications, and they have no negative impacts on plants, mammals, birds, fish, etc. But instead of that, if we were using a pesticide, that has so many ill effects on all these living organisms. And the third one is a bacterium used as a biocontrol agent. You would have heard about BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. This bacterium is available as dried spores, which is mixed with water and sprayed on plants. And if they are eaten by insect larvae, it will cause death of those insects and their larvae. So BT is actually a rod-shaped bacterium like that. They can also be used as biofertilizers, tiny microbes serving as biofertilizers and increasing the fertility of the soil. So you don't have to add manure or fertilizer. These microbes enrich the nutrient quality of the soil. Good example is Rhizobium, which you know is a symbiotic bacterium living in the root nodules of leguminous plants. They have the ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen. They fix it as ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, etc., thereby increasing soil fertility. Two other bacteria, but they are free living. They live freely in the soil. They don't depend on the roots of any plants. Their names are Azospirillum and Azotobacter. They can also increase soil fertility. The third one is Mycorrhiza. It is a symbiotic association of a fungus with the root of higher plants. Mycorrhiza is not one organism. It is fungus associated with the root of a higher plant. And this fungus generally belongs to the genus Glomus. So why has that plant attached a fungus along with it, allowed a fungus to live inside it? The plant gets many benefits, like it helps to absorb phosphorus from the soil. It helps to resist other fungi and pathogens. It helps to tolerate salinity and drought. It brings about overall increase in plant growth. Cyanobacteria are the colored bacteria. For example, Anabaena. You can see this one is Anabaena, and this special cell here is the heterocyst, which can fix nitrogen. Similarly, another cyanobacteria which is commonly used in rice fields is Nostoc. Again, you can see the special cells called heterocysts that are capable of converting gaseous nitrogen into nitrogen compounds, thereby increasing soil fertility. So what are the values that you learned from this lesson? You learned the value of forward thinking, thinking ahead and planning accordingly, planning life in such a manner as to make it convenient for yourself. You also develop something called scientific attitude, where you can use these bacteria, these tiny microbes which you can't even see with your naked eye, for benefit of mankind. So that is the scientific attitude. Thank you for watching.